Welcome to Humanity Rising. I'm Tom Eddington. Jim Garrison is away. Delighted to be finishing up with day 10 of our 2 weeks on when peace was a secret. We focused this last 2 weeks on the focus on peace literacy. And today, after 9 days of the peace literacy, we can honestly say that peace is no longer a secret. And so we're delighted to go into today's conversation. And I will ask the audience to put on your seatbelt, strap yourself in, because we're joined today by Marilyn King, Olympian, and a fellow Olympian, Mary Osborne Andrews. So Marilyn, welcome. Audience, get yourself ready.
Well, thank you, Tom. And this is going to be a lot of fun. One of my very favorite people on the planet competes with Tom. But, I really do want to just first express my deep gratitude to Jim Garrison for saying yes when Tom suggested we do this, and Tom for being my dear friend and the great facilitator that you are. Because peace literacy is important. And it's really clear. If you want to achieve something, no matter how much you want it, if you're poorly informed and misinformed and have old out, you cannot be effective in what you do. So this was really the first year we've had a chance to do what I consider to be a report card, using the Pathways to Peace lens of 8 different sectors that, when together, this is what peace looks like to me. And we got to bring some pretty incredible people to this report card. And we had many more in the lineup, but I look forward to the ensuing years in which we get to bring just a really succinct conversation in each of the areas, so people can see what the history is of peace, what the status is of peace, where it exists and why, and how they can be involved in accelerating the next evolution of peace, because we can speed shift to world peace. So I'm going to move really quickly because I am very excited. Those of you who have been here, not surprised that Marilyn is excited, because I had an aha in the Olympic Village that we could see peace in my lifetime. If people thought like me about peace, if people brought how Olympians think to how they think about peace. And I thought Dwayne Elgin yesterday was just brilliant. His excitement was just, filled the entire planet. It's like, we can do this. We can do this. We have everything we need. So I am delighted that my dear friend, Mary Osborne Andrews, is going to be joining us. So Mary, if you would go ahead and turn on your camera while I wax poetic about you for a moment. So Mary is an Olympic javelin thrower, but to me, she is like the consummate Olympian. Do we see Mary? I haven't seen Mary yet.
Yeah, she's with us.
Oh, there she is. Thanks. So I consider Mary like the consummate Olympian, because it's not just what she did on the field. And when I talk a little bit about Mary's history, it's like, I know her family background, how many people got accepted to Stanford, number one. First of all, I got the nicest rejection letter I've ever gotten from Stanford. Mary was accepted with a scholarship for 2 teams, not just one, but 2. And then what I understand about her academic history is that, she finished her first degree faster than anybody. They created a new degree program based on what she was wanting to learn. So, she's just like an over-the-top performer everywhere she goes. I know who she is as a mother and a wife and a family person, and her family. She brings who she is as an Olympian to how she feels and her passion for family and for community. And then there's her business. Part of why I'm excited that she's here today, because she really engaged in what she calls business and life coaching before there was the field, in my opinion. She was doing it before people knew there was what. Prior to Mary, if you said, I'm a coach, people knew you were talking sports. Now, when you say I'm a coach, people want to know. Well, Mary was there, before that shift happened. So what I want to say in terms of Mary is that I guess the way I feel most privileged is Mary and I have been what we call training partners, not in track and field, but in life. And there isn't anybody that I have been more gifted by than in my training partner relationship with Mary Osborne Andrews. So I asked Tom to put up a slide because this actually marks a soft launch of something that I have been envisioning and developing and talking with my Olympian friends about. But this is the first time I get to kind of engage in a conversation under this umbrella called We're Talking Peace with Olympians. So this is a visual that was created for this next chapter. So as Tom said, fasten your seatbelt. We're talking peace with Olympians. And I'm particularly delighted to hand literally the relay baton over to Mary, because we're going to be talking about what would it take to up your game. I believe that everybody who cares about peace and gets up and does the best they can, that we're all on the peace team. As long as you care about peace and you're just doing, but we're kind of at the recreational level. So I wanted to talk with Mary about play big. And what does it mean to up your game to the Olympic peace team? So Mary, if you would do me a favor because of whatever injustice I did, and what would be helpful for people to know about who you are and what you're bringing to the party that has to do with play big, about up leveling to the Olympic peace team.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. And Marilyn, thanks for that introduction and really highlighting the nature of our relationship in terms of training partner for over decades. And, you know, Marilyn is a fellow Olympian, mentor, friend, training partner, and really has become family. So love you, Marilyn. Love that you're getting to do this work in this venue, and thanks to everybody who made this possible for you to, you know, get to play. And I love there's a quote from the movie The Rookie, and this guy, you know, is struggling between should he be home with his family or pursuing this, you know, baseball thing. And he wakes up one morning and he's centered. He's like, got it. They both get to coexist. And so he walks to his buddy Brooks. He says, "Hey, Brooks, guess what we get to do today? We get to play baseball." And that has become a mantra. And so Marilyn, Tom, and everybody here, it's like, guess what we get to do? We get to play peace today and play big in up-leveling everybody's ability to be on the Olympic peace team with Marilyn King. Thank you, my friend.
Yeah. And so you're going to share with people some of your background and what you bring.
Yeah, I thought, you know, being your training partner kind of said it all, but I'll add a few things here. First of all, the thing I would want you to know most about me is that I am passionate about performance. I was passionate about performance as an athlete, and I was passionate about performance in terms of studying that at Stanford, really at all levels. Performance at the individual level, performance between people like training partners, performance on a team, which is very different than the first two, and then performance as an organization or a community or, you know, a planet, which is vastly different than any one of the previous three. So I've really over, you know, 40 years just continued to hone in on what does it actually take to generate performance and an internal experience of self, team, community, and, you know, continue to do that work. The second thing I would like you to know about me is I'm actually a basketball player. So I'm a basketball player who became an Olympian throwing a stick. So I made the 1980 Olympic team throwing the javelin. And my father, Bill, who I adore, used to pick up the 3-pound stick and say, who would have thunk this stick would have taken you around the world and paid your way through school? And so, you know, I think the story of how I became an Olympian really highlights Marilyn's work on passion, vision, action. Because I was passionate about basketball. I was not passionate about throwing it. It hurt to throw the javelin. You turn your body into a freaking human catapult. And my hip today is, paying the price for that. So yeah, I wasn't passionate about it until the final throw in the rain in Eugene, Oregon. Well, let's say just before the final throw.
At the
Because
Olympics,
just
right?
at the Olympic trials, yes. Just before the final throw, Karen Smith threw her final throw, and it was her best throw ever. And the crowd erupted, and I heard this sound, click, 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 click. And it was the photographers taking her picture as she ran back down the runway. And as she came down, she gave me a high five. And in that moment, hearing those click, 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 I literally said to myself, I want me some of that. And it was in that nanosecond that I became passionate about becoming an Olympic javelin thrower. And I am, certain, had Karen not thrown just before me, had I not had that awakening of passion, I doubt I would have made the team on the final throw. The second thing about Marilyn's passion, vision, action. Marilyn, go ahead.
Right, Mary, we're going to do this. We're going to go back and forth here because
Mhm.
there's something that we can just bring forth right here through our Olympic story. Because I'm about to go do a corporate gig with Eddie Hart. And he was seized by a thought when he saw Jim Hines break the world's record and become the world's fastest human. And Eddie Hart was seized by a thought at 13 years old. And it was that same moment. I want me some of that. And it was in that moment that it was really a body, mind, and spirit alignment. The passion for that brought up new thoughts, and it didn't matter. It was going to move into action. For me, it was when they invited someone I had beaten to go to the Olympic training camp. And I thought, if she can be in Olympics and I'm better than she is, that means I could be. I was seized by the thought that I could be an Olympian. So I encourage people who are listening to just think, is there some moment when you set your mind to something, when you were seized by a thought that's having the experience of aligning passion, vision, action, or it's when body, mind, and spirit align? So I wanted to underline that in terms of that moment that you described so beautifully.
Yeah, and that was my moment of passion, right? And so I think one of the things I learned is the passion, vision, action may emerge at different times in different ways. Like I really started out as action. Man, I'm reliable for action. I'm an action machine. But in terms of action, what I didn't know was that action needed to be coupled with relaxation. And so like Marilyn King talks about her coach who had a 10-day training regimen and the 10th day was a rest day. And I've had to learn how to meditate and breathe and bring relaxation. And I was first taught that at the Olympic Training Center in 1978 in Colorado Springs, before they even had a track built. So the javelin coach, I was 16, 17 years old, from Montana. And the javelin coach at the Olympic Training Center was this Russian rigorous coach who didn't let us sit down at all. And so there was no track there. So we took the bus out to the Air Force Academy to their track. We were not allowed to sit on the bus. We had to stand holding on and doing hip thrusts, right? Javelin motion. When we got back for lunch, no, we couldn't just go in for lunch. We had to throw rocks like javelins. I swear we cleared the field that became the track at the Olympic Training Center. But I also learned how to tighten muscles and relax. I also learned how to visualize. At age 16, I was brought to that training camp in Colorado Springs. But even then, it was all about the action for me because I was really a basketball player. And remember, the passion didn't come until the final throw. But the vision part for me was as a senior in high school in Billings, Montana, I woke up one day to the newspaper. And in the newspaper, there was an article on Ken Foreman, the Olympic coach for that year. And he was traveling the country talking about the track and field in the upcoming Olympics in Moscow. I didn't know him. I didn't know he was there. But in black and white print in the Billings Gazette, Ken Foreman was quoted as saying, Billings has its own Olympian in the making, Mary Osborne. And it was in that moment, like, right, Marilyn, if he believes that I can be Olympian, then whoa. But remember, passion, vision, action. So I was in high action, had the vision thanks to Ken Foreman, but I did not have the passion until the nanosecond before I threw my final throw, making the Olympic team. So that's what I want you to know about my story. The third and last thing I'll say that I want you to know about me is that I'm living my best life. And that is based on the sacredness of the work I get to do as a being-based coach, working with individuals, teams, and organizations. It's based on what Marilyn said, I get to be mama to 3 amazing adults, 2 of which are traveling internationally home today. So I'm holding space for their safe travel. And the opportunity, challenge, and extreme gift of learning how to navigate life with a husband over almost 40 years and being able to be proud of how we have traveled life's journey together. It isn't all roses, right? In that kind of intimate relationship, but boy, am I proud of how we've navigated. And we are so blessed and grateful for the family that we have co-created.
Beautiful. Tom, anything that you would like to ask or interject? But I'm going to be wanting Mary to give people just the very briefest sense of what's the conceptual framework she uses when she steps into, I think, organizationally, Mary, and any group of people who want to see themselves as a team. So we can bring that conceptual framework into Play Big for Peace. But Tom, any thoughts or questions that come up now that you've met Mary?
Yeah, there are several. I mean, certainly my my curiosity and wanting to know more about who you are and how you came to be. And I appreciate your opening comments. That was terrific to give us some insight into those moments. I also wanted to. I was reading this morning, and I'm a little hesitant, but I think it's relevant. I was reading this morning that the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu had privately agreed to a 21-day ceasefire with President Biden. And in the last moment, he now, after getting pushback from some of the conservative members of the Knesset and his cabinet, that he's unwilling to agree to the 21-day ceasefire. And publicly, he's saying no. But in that moment, when I was reading that, it's further evidence to what we've been talking about for 2 weeks, that peace can happen in a nanosecond. And literally all it would take is for him to agree to the 21-day ceasefire. And so we're hanging in this moment of peace, no peace in the Middle East. And I just so appreciate both of you sharing those moments you've had in your life, those nanoseconds where we had to let go of a thought and we could embrace a new thought form. And it can happen, as Marilyn repeatedly says, we can speed shift in a nanosecond. And I'm always apprehensive about bringing world events into a conversation like this, but I think it's important to recognize that whatever we think is happening in the world, it can change instantaneously.
I'm interested in Mary's response, but as you said that, Tom, what my brain did was go to a much larger perspective of what percentage of the 8 billion people on the planet are living to some degree in peace, but also relative to what Netanyahu is doing, how little support there is for doing what he's doing. And we're living in a moment on the planet in which we're figuring out how do we contain and disempower a bully.
Well, we heard it, I think it was yesterday with Dwayne Elgin, that we've got 8 billion people on the planet, and there are about 10,000 who have the ability to control the destiny of our planet, of the human race, of life on Earth. And at the same time, the vast majority of the 8 billion can influence and shape what those 10,000 do.
Exactly, in ways that we couldn't even 10 years ago. We know how to do this, and as Dwayne so elegantly said, we can do this. We have everything we need, but there's a mind shift that has to happen. If you feel like you're impotent and there's nothing you can do, they say there's two kinds of people in the world: those who think they can and those who think they can't, and they're both right. So Mary,
the thing I will add, and you will get more into the, how do you do this? How do you up level to the Olympic, peace team? What I'll say right now in terms of Tom's comments, first of all, just it's, heartbreaking for the tragedy, the grief that occurs in people's lives, whether it's on the individual, community, or global level. And there are those things occurring. So there's this concept I use called everything belongs, where joy and grief can coexist, where peace and tragedy can coexist. So, this notion of not pitting things against each other, but really experiencing that everything belongs, means that we are able to feel and experience the grief while we're also experiencing the joy and the possibility. And Tom, you talk about world events, and for me personally, Marilyn doesn't like that I do this, but I always talk, about the asterisk that's next to my name as an Olympian, because I made the Olympic team, an official member of the 1980, proud member of the 1980 Olympic track and field team, although I would have preferred basketball until that final throw. And if you know your world history, the United States boycotted the Moscow Games in 1980, and I was not allowed to go and compete. And so there's always that asterisk that I'm an Olympian, but a boycotted Olympian. And so my personal journey has definitely traversed all the wounds about not belonging. And have done quite a bit of good, healing work around I do belong. And as Marilyn says, yeah, you are one of the most consummate Olympians I know. So one of the things Marilyn got to experience that I did not was the Olympic Village, although I had my Olympic Village moment. So we're Cold War, Russia and the United States, not in a good space. I'm over in Europe competing with the United States Olympic team, and we're in Rome, and I missed the American bus to go to training at the stadium. I'm 19 years old, girl from Billings, Montana, and I know one thing: I got to get to the stadium. So what do? I just get on the next bus. Guess what bus it was? The Russian bus. I get on that bus, and I kind of, make my way down to an open seat. And my experience was what Pierre de Coubertin created the Olympic Games for: to create a better and more peaceful world through youth participating in sport. And I was so welcomed as a fellow athlete on that bus. That was my Olympic Village moment.
Yes.
Now, the other thing I remember about that is sitting down and just being blown away by the muscle definition of the calf of the 800-meter runner sitting in front of me. I was like,
Beautiful.
So I think just in terms of being aware, and that's where, if Marilyn would do a daily news show, that's the news show I'd watch, because my experience of her is that she's got a better beat on what's actually happening around the world. And so this awareness of what's going on without it taking us out is part of what it means to be on the Olympic peace team, is that everything belongs, and you base what you're going for based on what's possible and feed that energy.
There you go. And I love that, how beautifully you articulate that, Mary. And I have a clunky phrase that really works, and I call it multiple simultaneous competing realities. Because that's the truth. At the same time, I have a refrigerator full of food, and your sons are coming to be with mom, which is one of your greatest joys. There are things happening in the world based on the taxes that we pay to our government. You know, it is excruciatingly painful to me that that is the case. And at the same time, so from an Olympian standpoint, one of the things that all Olympians do is in that moment when they call your name and you step up. You know, somebody just cleared the high jump and they're yelling and the gun's about to go up. You know, you take a big breath and you exhale and you have to eliminate all those outside distractions. What are you going to focus on? And in that breath, you go back to who you are, to who you know yourself to be, what your deepest, highest intention is. So the breath, eliminating outside distractions, go to that deep, quiet place and recall, feel that place that you know who you are and what you're here for. And then when you take another breath and step up, you just let the body do what your mind and spirit have led you to do. So I love the phrase that you use, but for me, I tell people there are multiple simultaneous competing realities. Who decides where your mindset is? Who decides in terms of airtime? And Eddie Hart talks about the 90-10 rule. He said people spend 90% of their time worried and stressed and focused on the problem. When they asked him when he was younger, so, you know, what were you thinking about at breakfast? He said, world's fastest human. What were you thinking about at lunch? World's fastest human. What were you thinking? World's fastest human. He spent 90% of his time focused on that. And what happens when you do that, it's like, there's a whole book, you know, written called True North. When you stay focused on that, everything you see is through that lens. It's like, oh, world's fastest human. These things aren't going to be helpful. I can't go smoke weed with my friends and do that stuff. Oh, these things are kind of okay, and I'm going to have to start doing these new things. So I love Eddie Hart's 90-10 rule. And by the way, for people who don't know his name, he was the world's fastest human and won a gold medal in 1972.
Mary, I want to pick up on something you said before, and I'll start by talking about Dr. Paul Ekman's work at UCSF. He, in conjunction with His Holiness the Dalai Lama, created the Atlas of Emotions. And something you were speaking to is that we can't put a governor or a limitation on some emotions without it affecting all of our emotions. And I'm wondering if you could speak a bit more about how to fully embrace all that all that life presents us with, how to live fully in each of the moments that we're feeling, whether it's just abject grief or rage or joy or anything that we experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And Tom, what I'll do is I'll pull in, you know, something Marilyn said about who gets to decide, pull in what you just brought into the conversation and wrap those both into an introduction on sort of the theory or concept of play big. So I'll get to what you're speaking to. It'll take me a minute to get there, but it also moves us into that. And it's like, there's a song by James Bay called Slide. And one of the lyrics, I may cry. I mean, it just breaks my heart because one of the lyrics in that song is, no one teaches you how to win big. No one teaches you how to win big, except Marilyn King, who taught kids in Oakland, you know, how to dare to imagine. So that she's the exception. But it's like heartbreaking to think that there's this perception that no one teaches you how to win big. You know, growing up in a large Catholic family as a girl, it wasn't said to me, but what was known is that the expectation was that I'd be a good girl, right? And so there wasn't a lot of room to play big. And so thankfully, I had a father who was a sports nut. So as soon as he saw he had a girl who could compete as well as his sons, that he was all in. And that's a whole nother conversation. But the theory behind play big, or the concept of play big, is that it's about playing for what you want, period. Playing for what you want. Now, in my work as a professional business and life coach, I talk to people every day who tell me what they don't want. And I say, great, that's great information. That's a great starting point. So if you don't want this, what do you want? And it's hard for people to articulate that. So part of the work is to really get clear. What is it that you want? No, what is it that you actually want? And what gets in the way of that is the belief of the possibility. And so when Marilyn says, what do you choose? I choose to work with people who want to play big by playing for what they want based on what's possible, not predictable. Right. And so partly because
what's possible, yeah. Predictable.
Right. And you could, think world peace. Hello. If you think what's predictable is this, you're not living in the realm of possibility. So it's really based on playing for what you want, based on possibility, not predictability. And then it's not being shy about it. It's like unapologetically Olympic, right? Unapologetically belonging, unapologetically 6 foot tall, right? Unapologetically me, unapologetically you, unapologetically us, where we do learn to win big. Marianne Williamson's quote, "Who are you to play small? You are a child of God. And when you let your light shine, you unconsciously and consciously give others permission to do the same." That's the invitation we have for you is, come play big with us. And it's boldly declaring what you want as if it's already true, because that taps into a part of the brain that is compelled to create that, to generate that, rather than the other part of the brain with the more, reasoning logic brain that says make, smart goals that are realistic. Like, no, smart goals based on what's relevant to what you want. And so it's playing for what you want based on possibility, not predictability, boldly declaring it, owning it. And then the final piece of it is really that as you take action, because of course you have to take action, otherwise you're a dreamer, right, Marilyn? With that action comes rigorous self-awareness. Man, oh man, if I could say, the thing I love about being a being-based coach, where it's not just what do you want, how are you going to get there, but who are you being about it? Like, if you want to double the size of revenue in your small business, but who you're being about it is a pissed off teenager that you have to work, it's not going to go very well. I spend 95% of my time over here. It's like, think of an iceberg. What you want and how you're going to get there is like the tip of the iceberg. What's the real work is the internal landscape of your beliefs about yourself, what you're afraid people would know or find out about you, the playing small, the self-critic, whatever you call it, the imposter syndrome, hundreds of names for it. But what I work with is helping individuals and teams and organizations and communities get to the deeper level conversations that really requires rigorous self-awareness and self-discovery as an individual, team, and organization. So playing big, that's the theory, that's the concept.
I want to just pull one other quote in that works for me really well. I love the phrase, in terms of what's possible versus predictable. One of the challenges for me is when I had my aha that we could see peace in my lifetime. And it's about, in one neurological firing, I went from I'm an also ran to I could be in the Olympics, from not knowing anything about peace to holy mackerel, we could see peace in my lifetime. So those just one neurological firing, creates new thoughts that lead to new behaviors that increase the possibility and the likelihood of that happening. But when I went out in the world, and was just like, oh my gosh, we could see peace in my lifetime. I was so excited. People are going, oh yeah, we thought we were going to change the world, back in the 60s too. Good luck with that, and it's like all of this stuff, it just kept deflating me. And then I heard Frances Moore Lappé say, people say, they try to call me an optimist. She said, I'm not an optimist. She said, but I'm also not a pessimist. She said, I'm a possibilist. I love that. I'm a possibilist because when people know my story, that in training for my third Olympic team, I gave myself a full year with nothing to do but train, got hit by a car, couldn't physically train, thought I'd be better next week, go for 7 months without able to train in 5 events, 6 to 8 hours a day, unable to even jog, and just envisioning that I'll be better next week and I'll be in the top 3 at the Olympic trials. And 7 months later, not having trained physically. And they give me a Novocaine injection in my back, and I placed second at the Olympic trials for the 1980 Moscow Games. That is literally impossible. You can't do that. You can't not train in the hurdle, shot put, high jump, long jump, and 800 meters and beat everybody in this country except one person. So when people say be realistic, it's like, I'm not going to give them the middle finger, but it's like, wow. I'm a possibilist. So I wanted to underscore what you were saying in terms of where you spend your time, Mary, looking, underneath what the goals are at the part that they really bring.
And I just want to pick up on something you said before, Mary, and tag on to what Marilyn just shared. So, for many people, their belief systems get in the way, or their past gets in the way, and they can't see their future. They can't see what's possible because of their past, or they can't see what's possible because of their present belief system. And I'm wondering if you both could speak to how do you help our audience? How do you help the people you coach? How do you personally live your life from a place of actually clearing that past, that present belief systems out of the way, so you can actually see that anything is possible and then live into that possibility?
Hey, Mary, what I'd like to do is tell a really quick story about the Dare to Imagine Kid process. And then from your perspective, the way that you understand what made that possible, I think would be a good 1-2 punch here. How about you?
Yeah, and then also I'll tie in the belief. How do you work around that and bring back Tom's previous question around all the emotions and how do you let all of them coexist? So we're co-creating here. So go ahead, Marilyn, and then I'll jump in on that.
Because, when I had the experience I did and tried to figure out what happened, and the Olympian thinking framework, that when people achieve things that seem impossible, it's passion powered. How they think about it is in a very particular way. And then it has, game plan and action. And coming back off the international circuit with people who were ahead of the neuroscientists in accelerated learning, I thought I've never really taught this to kids. So let me try it out. And I wound up with a group of kids who named themselves the Dare to Imagine Kids. And the short form of what we did was we knew not to start with action and not to start with vision. We needed to start with passion. And these were inner city kids in what we call the war zone in Oakland, whose vision of what was possible was you could be a cop, a teacher, or a drug dealer. That was it. I sure didn't want to be the first two. And, they were easily sucked into the third. So we thought, well, if that's all they can see, we have to open up their world. And I could talk on and on because I love working with them. But basically what we did is we just took them on field trips and exposed them to all kinds of things. And when they saw things like at the Oakland airport, the guy that was taking the bags off of the conveyor belt, and we started to talk about how much money he made. And the kids are going, oh, I could do that. So we kept opening up their mind to what was possible. And then we brought them back home after weeks, and we had them move into the vision part. And it had 2 parts. Well, if you want to be a veterinarian or a video game producer or whatever it is, what are the skills? So there was a whole set of work where they had to come up with what are the skills, which ones am I good at, and which ones might I need some little work on. And the second part of vision was what are the steps? We literally have a visual success map where they see the finish line and where they are. And there are 15 things on this success map. 3 different kinds of support. What are the obstacles? How do you overcome them? So there were really wonderful whole brain activities in the vision domain. And then we had to move them to action. So all we did was have them make a contract and say, in the next 3 weeks, what are you going to do? And when they did that, we took them to raging water slides as a gift. And slowly but surely, they internalized. When you have something you really care about, you have to think about it in very particular ways and have a game plan, daily practice, and feedback on that. So that's kind of my short version, working with war zone inner city kids, of how we stepped into the answer to your question, Tom.
Yeah, and I would say, in terms of riffing off of that, this notion of believing what's possible, years ago, Marilyn introduced me to a way to have people experience it in the moment. And so the way she did that, and the way that I've done it, is to mark off 29 feet 2.5 inches, which is the length that Bob Beamon jumped in the 1968 Olympics, obliterating the world record by 2 feet, when for 2 decades it had been beaten 1/2 inch to 1/4 inch to right. So at my kids' elementary school, when they were in elementary school, on the side of the school, we put up a big poster that marked off 29 feet 2.5 inches. And, a starting point and an ending point with a big curve, right? And so we demonstrated and talked to the kids about a human being jumped here, left the ground, and didn't land until here. Now, I can't, unfortunately, have you experience that visual here, but I encourage you to mark off 29 feet 2.5 inches and see what that is, because the aha that is so experiential in the moment about what's possible is, if it's possible for a human being to jump that far, like have their feet off the ground for that distance, there is much more possible in our lives than impossible. The second thing I would say about the belief and how you work with yourself and with others, it's that rigorous self-awareness I was talking about, so that you're taking action based on a powerful being. And so, fundamentally, there's all sorts of limiting beliefs that we got to work through. So part of it is unearthing those. And so, for me, an example of a limiting belief, again, going back to my background, my 100% Irish Catholic grandmother, when she found out I was getting married, said to me, I'm, happy for you, but I'm a little disappointed because I thought you'd have a career. Now, folks, I'm old, but I'm not that old, right? But that was a limiting belief she had, that just was not, like, I wasn't limited by it. John Elway, classmate at Stanford, who, was the quarterback for the Denver Broncos, after football season was over at Stanford, the football field became my javelin throwing area. And the javelin is a stick with a metal tip that will injure, kill, maim if you get hit with it. So you don't want to be a javelin catcher, as they say. So John came out, and his limiting belief was that I could not throw 200 feet. And so he was throwing the football with a buddy, and I was, getting ready for a meet. So I kept saying, John, you got to move back. You got to move back. And he's like, yeah. And he moved back an inch. Finally, I said, John, you've got to move back. And I was angry. And he did one of these, looked me up and down, and took a baby step back. I threw over 200 feet. Now, the best I ever threw in a competition was 181. So I threw over 200 feet and missed John Elway by this much. And he no longer had the limiting belief, that I couldn't do that. So a great exercise is to talk about, for yourself, like writing exercise. What are my limiting beliefs? And this is, what were you taught growing up about deserving what you want? What did you learn growing up about believing you could have what you want? This whole notion of what do you want. Another exercise, if people don't know what they want, I have people do, and I learned again this from Marilyn, but used it over, several different scenarios, where take 3 minutes, write out your birthday wish list, longest birthday wish list you can come up with, and then go back and look, no, what do I really want? Like this rigorous self-study about what do you want, and looking at what the limiting beliefs are, and then dispelling them. Tom, this now brings in the emotion and all the experiences we have as human beings, grief, etc. So in this past year, I really took on the rigor, one of my favorite words, rigor and intentionality are my favorite words, of trauma coaching. And here's what I learned about trauma and coaching people is that we all have experienced trauma in our lives. Small T trauma, you know, my brother took my toy, right, away from me. Big T trauma, you know, my grandmother was murdered in her farmhouse when I was 6.5 years old. We all have trauma, whether it's small t, big T, and even if it's small or medium t, you know, your response system, if you didn't have what you needed as a very young child, you don't have a very rigorous, you know, stress response system. So to me, you know, playing big requires you to allow your humanity. It requires you to allow all these experiences, but it also requires you to learn how to be with them. And so one of the tools that I'll share with you that I have people take on, there's lots of variations of this, but mine is chill, CHILL. C stands for catch yourself that you're being triggered, because if you're being triggered by your friend Marilyn or by your, you know, kids or friends or whatever, it isn't about them. It's about what is it in you that has you be triggered by them, because they're just human beings doing their thing, right? So catch yourself. H is halt, stop. Like, don't try to do anything when you're triggered. That's also allowing that humanity. I is internally investigate what's going on. Ooh, what triggered me? Oh, yeah, that reminded me when I felt like I didn't belong. First L, love yourself. The judgment is what keeps those limiting beliefs and everything going, right? So just love, compassion, like if you were loving your friend. And the second L is lean into what you're committed to, not what's comfortable, right? But lean into what you're committed to. So chill in the moment. Catch yourself if you're triggered. Halt. Internally investigate what has you be triggered. Love yourself, and then choose. And this is, Marilyn, to your point, who gets to decide? I get to decide that I can allow my humanity as my first response, but I can choose my second response, and that is leaning into what I'm committed to.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Well, I would love us to now take these concepts and ideas and look at what can we. I would like to invite people to up their game. Everybody, I mean, particularly the people who are listening to this, Mary, you know, they're already big players. You know, they wouldn't be here at Humanity Rising and when peace was no longer a secret if they weren't already highly committed. And I was really curious in terms of you and I being in the conversation about what might we invite people into? What is the difference between being a recreational player, you know, one of the top performers, which most of these people are? What does it take to go to that next level, to be on the Olympic peace team? And for me, there's a couple things. One that is where I started in this work 40 years ago, which is if they're going to think like Olympians, you have to be clear about the goal. You know, it's the what do you want, right? And people are so unclear. I thought that my job as an Olympian was to help people get really clear about the goal. And then it was really, you know, I showed this before. I found that the Brahma Kumaris already asked people, you know, what's your goal? And they put it together in a book. And it doesn't matter how I articulate it or how I think about it, but as long as it lives in the domain of something that people could agree with. So, you know, for me, the goal is a global Olympic village where people of every race and religion, you know, high-performing gold medalists and also ran like me, you know, that we're living in peace. And it was possible from my perspective because everyone I saw had respect for one another. And we were curious. Who are you? How'd you get here? What's your story? So for me, the goal and upping ourselves to the Olympic peace team means being really clear about what you said. So what do you want? What does that look like? So for me, it's the Olympic Village. I love Dr. King's when he said, I have the audacity to believe that people everywhere can have 3 meals a day for their body, education and culture for their mind, and freedom and dignity for their spirit. That looks like peace to me. So in terms of, upping people and inviting people to up their game, I would say, number one, you have to be really clear about the goal. Number two, you have to be really clear about your role, because it's a team. My role is different from Mary's. My role is different from Tom's. My role is different from JC, who was here, who's thinking about running for mayor of Oakland. But he is on the peace team, right? What's his role? So what's your role on the team? Which is why I love this 2 weeks, because it says, oh, these are special teams. Maybe your role has to do with up-leveling governance, or maybe education is the point of the spear for you. That when we fix that, everything else. Other people were about stabilizing the population or ending hunger. What team are you on? What's your role? So what's the goal? What's your role? And then for me, it's about daily practice. And we know practice doesn't make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. So what is your most important daily practice? And I think of it in 3 ways. What's your most important daily practice to increase the peace personally? Do you meditate? Do you go for a walk in nature? You say your morning prayers, read the Bible? What is it? What do you do to increase the peace personally? And then what's your most important daily practice? When you step out into the world, you already do things that are part of the peace team, right? You hold the door for somebody, all of those kinds of things. But what about increasing the peace? What can you do today? What's your daily practice that will up level as an Olympic peace team member? What can you do out there? And then the third part is why I come back to, this 2-week process. What about systemic change? You want to score a 3-pointer like Steph Curry, right? It's about systemic change. And that's why, I really am excited about having the conversation with Jim Garrison, about having this 2 weeks be every year before Peace Day, where we can provide a report card, the story about how things are going, and make it easy for people to step into systemic change in whatever domain they think is possible. So that's kind of where I go, Mary, in terms of up-leveling people to the Olympic peace team. What's the goal? What's your role? And what's your daily practice? So you come from play big. Talk to me.
Yeah, and before you go there, Mary, in response, I'd like to just bring in and invite you both to talk about context. So, we saw Hillary Clinton in 2016, she cracked the glass ceiling. She didn't break the glass ceiling, but she provided the opportunity for people to believe that a woman could be president in the United States. When Barack Obama was elected president in 2008, he demonstrated by breaking that glass ceiling that an African American could be president of the United States. So we can point to examples around the world, but we are living in a world with systems that do force limitations on people. And so I'd like you both, as you're responding to Marilyn's question, how do we reconcile what's possible with what exists? And in the context of peace, we have this narrative that says peace is not possible, peace doesn't already exist. And so how do we make sure that the audience is walking away with an understanding that anything is possible, and yet at the same time there are things in the world that makes life difficult, challenging?
And I'm going to let Mary run with both parts of it, but I'm going to answer your question just in a word. And the word is courage. And that's why I just love the Dare to Imagine kids. It was a courageous act. Everybody, these kids, there was no one in their day from the moment they woke up until they went to sleep who said, you can make it. You're good. If you followed them around, all of the messages to them were, you're a piece of shit and you'll never amount to anything. So my answer to context and where we are all living right now, it is an act of courage to dare to imagine that we can speed shift to world peace.
Wow. Okay. I have like a million different thoughts coming through. This is like really bringing the building blocks together as to what it takes. So I'll jump in here with using sort of the framework of the elements of Play Big to pull some of these things together. And I'm going to bring Stan's comment I saw in the chat about how, it's all about caring. And so it's like, right on, Stan, like when I look at what are the, three key elements of Play Big, it's around performance. And my studies at Stanford pointed out that the first element of high performance is caring relationships. Literally, there's a professor at Stanford, Nell Noddings, who wrote a very academic book on caring. Like, she defined it and measured it, and it was like, wow. And so my master's thesis was looking at Dornbusch's theory on the system you need for high performance to occur, and Nell Noddings' notion of caring relationships, what the evaluatee perceives in the relationship with the evaluator, whether it's athlete, coach, employee, boss, whatever. And in this master's thesis I did, my degree was social sciences, it's like, what is it? Master's degree in social science research. And so it was very, social science research focused. And it was exciting because the results were statistically significant, that both the system of high performance and caring relationship contributed to high performance, but caring relationship had a higher correlation. So fundamentally, to play big, you've got to be immersed or co-create or engage in caring relationships. You need your cheerleaders. You need the people who are just going to love you. The second part of it is this system that creates high performance. And so I could talk for hours on all the things within a system of high performance at the individual level, which is different than what you need in a system for high performance between two people, because you have the dynamic between individuals that takes much more precedent than my opinion or your opinion. It's what's the dynamic between us. And I could talk about the system that exists for high performance as a team, which team thinking is the soup that gets created by the individuals putting in the ingredients. It's not you advocating and me agreeing with you. It's that the team's thinking is something completely different that's transformative of the individual. I could talk about the system that you need at the organization community level, right? And all of those things. And, whatever depth we get into there, all of that exists. But it's like caring relationship, a system, because it's the system that creates the new context. It's the system that creates the pathways. It's the systems that create an environment of success. And so one of the books, again, my mentor, Marilyn King, introduced me 2 years ago as The Path of Least Resistance. And the very opening statement says, if you've ever driven down the streets of Boston, you got to wonder who in the heck designed these streets. They're narrow, they're windy, they're uneven. It's like, and what we know context-wise, the streets of Boston are built upon the mentality of the 17th century cow. Because what happened is that pasture or that, grassland, the cows walked it, they took the path of least resistance. Then people walked the paths of the cows because that was the easy. And then cobblestones were put on where the path, because that was the easiest. And you can get the story. So one year I ended up being on a facilities audit at the University of New Brunswick. And we were looking at their design for landscaping when new buildings were put on the university. And what they told us is They don't do a landscaping plan for a year after a new building is put on, because the students define the path of least resistance and then they pave. So they flip that. So this, paying attention to system, paying attention to the structures of an organization or the structures of a community is there to support people who, given our humanity, are likely to follow the path of least resistance. So context-wise, a lot of my upbringing was the context of what was possible for a girl versus a boy. And so what I think is important is to note whether it's based on gender, race, sexual orientation, all the different things where we other people around, is to recognize how real those limitations are, and then look at the courage it takes and the self-awareness. Like when I saw my father say, well, my sons have all kind of grown up, so I guess I have to wait for little Willie to grow up. In that moment, I shifted the context, because it was like, wait a minute, he doesn't have to wait for Will to be the next athlete. I'm going to be. And one of my favorite articles is Bill Osborne talking about the sports in Billings, Montana, because he was a nut and did all these different things. And at the very end, he said, yeah, Pat and Tom are playing basketball, but look out, Mary's in the backyard. And I was probably 10 at the time, right? So his context changed, because he was more interested in me as an athlete than the belief he had that I was a girl. And years later, he apologized to me for not teaching me how to golf. I caddied for him all the time, but he didn't teach, on and on and on and on. So it's really, oh my God, the limitations are so real. I'm married to an African-American man. My 3 sons, are African-American. And it's yeah.
Yeah, Mary. Yeah, Mary.
There's
Yep.
a Malcolm X poster in the foyer of our house that says, excellence, believe in it. We had a pipe leak a number of years ago, and we had to take that down, and we hadn't put it up. And our 3 adult sons, all individually at different times, came to us and said, where's the Malcolm X poster that says excellence, believe in it? You have to put it back up. We saw that every day as we walked out of this house.
Yes.
We did not even know we were changing context. I threw out books, children's books, when my kids were young, that were a scholastic series on the African-American athletes, inventors. And they were children's books that all started with the trauma of being Black, and then the courage and the overcoming. And I'm like, this is not my son's story. I honor that that's what had to happen. I'm not feeding this story to my 6-year-old son. So it's this awareness of the real biases that are out there, and then both internally and around us, changing that context, which can happen in a nanosecond. So elements: caring relationships, foundational, a system that supports high performance. And the third thing I'll say is, ultimately, it's 100% ownership for the results in your internal experience. We like the blame game, right? It's so easy. But there's this ability to say, I'm going to take 100% ownership for my experience. So as much as my grandma believed this, that's not what I choose. I'm going to take ownership for my experience. I love my grandma. She loves me. And, it's like we were able to have a conversation about how I could have a career in marriage. So brilliant, questions, deep work here around trauma, around real limitations that are out there, around the power of excellence and courage, and the power of personal choice, which requires a lot of internal work. Tom, Marilyn, I think we need to do some deep breathing here. So I'm going to lead us in 3 deep breaths in through the nose, out through the mouth.
And as you do, I want to just preface this. Every Olympic athlete they saw, when they called their name, what we're about to do is what they did. And why do we do this? Why do we do this, Mary?
Let's entertain that after the breath. Like I really just need to have us breathe. So,
I'm with you. Take us away.
okay. Yeah. I love how breath can change the energy, center it, ground it. So, Marilyn, could you repeat your question?
I'm not sure that it's relevant at this point, but the question was, why do we do this?
Why do we do what?
What you were just, insisting that we do, which is to take that, you said 3 deep breaths. And I have to say that, as that happened for me, and I find that quiet place, why do I do this? It brings me back to who I know myself to be. And one of the shifts I'm making in my work right now is, it's when we as Olympians do it, it's not just 1 deep breath. I'm not just going to be an Olympian, when I'm at workout or when I'm about to jump. It's in every breath. So how do we shift from reminding ourselves, that I am an Olympian, I am Marceline's granddaughter, I am here for a reason. And thank you, Mary. You're about the systems at all these different levels. Of course, we're training partners for exactly this reason. I was an Olympic pentathlete. I did 5 events by myself. I didn't have to do it one-on-one with a doubles partner or with a team or affect any of that. And I have a limiting belief that I don't do that well. I don't know how to do that. And I have to up my game to be part of a team of people who are focused on playing their part as an Olympian and the Olympic peace team. So thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One more story of limiting beliefs. So I made the Olympic team in 1980. Thought I was done. In 1988, I went back or competed in the 84 Olympic trials. So I made it to 3 Olympic trials. I forgot about that one. But then got married, started working, and in 1988, went back into training because I saw a classmate from Stanford live on TV about to make the team. And I was thrown back on the couch, literally physically felt thrown on the couch because my thought was, I don't want her to make the team. So there was trauma there. I wasn't done. And so I went back into training 88 for the 92 Olympic trials. And by then, Marilyn and I were good friends, training partners. So I had been in the 80 and 84, not knowing Marilyn, met her soon after the 84 Olympics. And so I was like, yeah, I'm working and this and this and this. And, I can't even do a push-up. So who am I to think that I can pull this together? Oh my God. Marilyn made me get down on the ground. She said, you can do a push-up. You just don't believe you can. And so you need to experience it. So she put a sweatshirt underneath my belly and she's holding both arms of the sweatshirt. And she says, do push-ups and I'm going to help you. And she helps pull me up. So I do a push-up and she pulls me up. I do a push-up. She pulls me up. And then she said, okay, now do it without the sweatshirt. And I do a push-up. And I'm like, oh my God, I can do a push-up. So it's like surround yourself by teammates like Marilyn, who are going to help you up level when you fall into that humanity of not believing you can do it.
And I'll share with people, one of the other things, we've just been, doing this for each other for a long time. And one of my favorite things that we did for many years was we would meet annually and do a review preview. And that review preview was just so powerful because, each year we had set the preview. Here's what this year is about for me. And it has some kind of a sexy tagline. And, what does that contain? And then we would get together the following year and review and then preview again. But it also works, right at the daily level. You begin your day the Olympian way by envisioning your goal. You stop during the day and take a breath and make sure you're on track. And at the end of the day, you do a review preview. How did I do that day? Right? It's like writing in your logbook what your workout was and how your times were. And I'm going to share just a really brief, what some people might consider a prayer, but it came out of our work, Mary, about, well, what do we mean by peace? How do you focus on peace? What does that mean to be an Olympian thinker, in the day? And it came to me through what you shared, only slightly different. And I have my phone that rings on the hour. And for a couple of years, this is what I did. And it, for me, brings it all together. I would just stop and just in that breath and going to that quiet place at the bottom and just kind of affirm, like in a prayer, peace within. And find that place, what that feels like. I would feel peace within. And then peace between. So everywhere I'm moving today, as a review preview, right? How have I done with peace between and in this next hour? And then peace all around. How does it look, here in Oakland, right? Oh, lots of peace, lots of peace. Oh, there's a lot of garbage, over here. So there's a litter thing. So I would breathe and just focus on peace within, peace between, and peace all around. And then peace here and now. What does that mean and feel like? Peace here and now. And then peace now and forever. And so in that moment, I just do a review preview. And at the end of the day, how did I do with peace within, peace between, peace all around? How are we doing? Peace here and now, and what I'm doing to assist peace forever.
Yes. Where I'm going to, and this is the role I play with Marilyn all the time, is as I help her take her visionary ideas and make them practical.
Now, Mary, what's more practical than what I just shared? Come on, girl.
Well, if you had waited, I was going to acknowledge you for how practical those were. And for the audience, it's like, as an individual, what can you do? And Marilyn's got it wired. The action is, yes, begin your day the Olympic way. So Marilyn, like, riff a little bit about what individuals, can actually do on a daily basis. And then I'm going to talk about how to up-level that to what it means to be part of the peace team. So Marilyn, take it away.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm just going to, reiterate what I said. It's like, as an individual on the Olympic peace team, I have to begin my day the Olympian way and not envision my gold that I could be in the Olympics, envision our gold. We could see peace in my lifetime. That's my gold. Right? So I begin my day the Olympian way. And it's like, so what does that mean? It's like, when I think about Michael Phelps, when he publicly declared that he was going to win 8 gold medals, you begin your day the Olympian way with that. And what happened instantly was he saw all the things he was already so amazing. So he was doing things other people didn't do, but he was going to have to do more. So 8 gold medals would put him into that, cognitive dissonance. The mind can't hold 2 conflicting beliefs like, oh my gosh, but this is a crazy thing. The mind gave him new thoughts that led to new behaviors that led to 8 gold medals. So begin your day the Olympian way. Envision our gold, whatever that is for you. And then for me, it's, you have to pause sometime during the day. That's why I love the Peace Wave. People stop at noontime in their time zone every day. And all they do is they do what Olympians do. They take a big breath, they exhale, they go to that quiet place, and they become more peaceful. So they are more peaceful in the world, and they may be involved in three-pointers like Steph Curry in systemic change. And then at the end of the day, do a review preview. How did I do today? Was I peaceful personally? How did I do interpersonally? Am I involved in systemic change? And it is why I love the stop sign, because there's nothing more pragmatic than how many times you see this. And if it reminds you to stop, take a breath, Olympian think, and then proceed. About as pragmatic as I can figure.
And I'm going to add a fourth pragmatic thing, and that is get a coach.
Oh,
Right. And it's not that I'm marketing myself or my profession. I will just say from my experience, the humanity of being Olympic, like no one needs a coach, like you need air to breathe, but why wouldn't you have a coach if you're up to playing big in your life and in the world?
yeah.
Because it's such valuable to have a trained listener to support you in mining your wisdom and your actions. So it's like, yeah, get a coach is the fourth practical thing I would add to that. What I'll say about up-leveling to be part of the peace team is the real distinction between an individual action and a team action. And so there's the system around being a team is that being part of a team requires this notion of sort of allowing your individual wisdom to be ingredients to the soup, and then the team owns the soup, not you, right? And for us who with egos, that's can be a mind-bending concept. So here's the thing. When you get on an elevator with other people, you're just a group of people on the elevator. That elevator stops and you can't get out, you become a team because all of a sudden you have a common purpose. So any of us who think that we're doing peace as an individual, it's like, no, there are 8 billion people on the planet that are part of a team, and that team exists beyond any one of our individual stories, experiences, traumas, hopes, dreams, beliefs. And so how do you be part of the Olympic peace team? The first thing is you can't treat it as a group. We're not a group of people living on the planet. We're a team of people living in conjunction with the planet.
So wait a minute.
So,
oh, Mary, here's where the problem comes up. That's why I love Dwayne so much. He's got the energy I do. What happens when you're on a team and people can't see what you see? I'm turning around and Dwayne and I are yelling, we can make it. We got this. We have everything we need. And people are going, rah, 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 rah. How do you be on a team when people don't see what you see? That we can win, that we are winning.
Well, it starts with the fact that you are on this team. You're not choosing to be on this team. By the nature of being born a human being on this planet, we're all on the team already.
Yeah.
Right? And as teammates,
people have thinking about our team.
Yeah. So you gotta do all the systemic things, along with a caring relationship where that human being is just being human. And right? Change the context. What we say in coaching all the time is using the Michelangelo quote. When asked, how'd you carve such a beautiful angel out of the stone? Michelangelo said, well, I saw the angel in stone and just chipped away at what was an angel.
Yeah.
And that's the thing about the Olympic peace team and being on this, planet Earth team, is that we already are that. We're just chipping away at what's not that, the limiting beliefs, the effects of trauma, all of it, right? And so it's like, the first thing is that, kind of, can you 100% take 100% ownership of the fact that you're on this team already? And then, choose how you want to be a teammate. And it's not always about being nice. Oh my goodness. All the work we do about partnering around feedback within organizations, Most people's relationship to feedback is, if it's good, I'm good. If it's bad, I'm going to get fired. They literally cannot take the information. So we teach people how to have a relationship to feedback that's based around partnering around information that supports your goals, right? That is very difficult to actually do. But when you can partner with other human beings, then you can have some of those difficult conversations, or crucial conversations, as we call them. You can storm on purpose with your team to get to the norming and performing. That's the juicy part of being part of the team. So ultimately, it's about accepting or honoring that you already are on this team, chipping away at what's not, great about this team, and then having the conversations you need to have. And so, it's being willing to go to a teammate in basketball and say, would you quit dribbling the ball off your foot? It's going out of bounds. Like, dude, come on. It's going to a teammate and saying, hey, I'm feeling affected by the conversation that you're having. Like, I'm experiencing that as something that isn't working for me. Like, have the conversation, right? Yeah. So you're on the team already. Chip away at what's not Olympic peace team, and then choose to be an amazing teammate that is loving, caring, and willing to have the difficult conversations.
And I'm going to give it back to Tom, because he has been exactly that for me from the moment we met. I've never had anyone else, when I tried to present something at this conscious leadership program, and I thought these were all my peers and they were going to get me and I didn't have to explain myself, and I didn't get much of a positive reaction. And Tom walked up to me at the break and he looked at me and he said, I get you. So Tom, you want to take us home here? And this has been a beautiful 2 weeks with you.
Yeah. So I want to go back to the fun experience you shared about doing the push-up. A few years ago, as I was approaching my 60th birthday, I just decided that I was going to, on my birthday morning, I was going to do 60 consecutive push-ups. And so I started working out every day, of just, adding additional push-ups to my daily routine. And when I got to my my 60th birthday, that's what I did. I did 60 consecutive push-ups. And I bring that up because, Marilyn, you're now in your 7th decade on this planet. Mary, I don't know for sure, but I get the sense you're in your 6th decade on this planet. And, not once in this conversation have I heard anything that would suggest that this notion that we were all raised in of, we retire at 65 and then we just decline from there. And I don't get a sense from either of you that that in any way is part of your beliefs. It's part of how you're thinking, how you're oriented. And so as we close out the program today in the last 2 weeks, I just love for each of you to share what keeps you going, what keeps you alive, and what are you passionate about?
You can't tell. You want to go first, Mary, or second?
Second.
Yeah. It's like I was seized by a thought that I could be in the Olympics when I was 15 years old. And there was nothing that was going to get in my way. No matter what people said, all those contact, all that stuff. And, it wasn't something I tried to do or knew to do. I was seized by that. It happened to me. And that's what happened to me in the Olympic Village. I looked around, was like, we could see peace in my lifetime. And it can happen that quickly because people can change their minds. And when they do, they'll change their behavior. And we can now communicate with people. As soon as I came out, Live Aid happened and we've got satellites all over. We can communicate with, anybody. Dwayne holding up the phone yesterday and going, it's right here. And pretty soon 3/4 of us, we can do this. We can see peace in my lifetime. I wake up on fire at 4:00 every morning, and it's boom. I could be in the Olympics. We could see peace in my lifetime. What the hell am I supposed to do today?
How about for you, Mary?
I think it really comes down to, what's my purpose? And I think it's so helpful for people to be able to give language to their purpose. So I would say the one thing that's probably shifted being in my 60s is my purpose used to be warrior for love. Like I appreciate my high school classmates because I recently saw my yearbook and they're like, yeah, Mary's a great athlete. Yeah, Mary's a smart student. But what I love most about Mary is how much she cares about the people. And I remember walking into a classroom and just without choosing it, just a calling, like looking for the people in the room that didn't have friends or were weird or whatever. And it was my mission. I was a warrior for love. They were going to experience love and acceptance and belonging. And so, what keeps me going is my purpose today, which is a slight variation, and that my purpose today is enveloped in love. I am enveloped in love. We are enveloped in love. And it doesn't have to be that rigor, although it's still one of my favorite words. But as Stan, I think, keeps pointing out, it's so much based on the heart and the caring. And so what keeps me going is that, hey, guess what we get to do today? We get to play. And what I'm playing for is for everyone to experience being enveloped in love.
Well, Mary, delightful to have you on the program today. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for coming and playing with us and bringing all your wisdom. Marilyn, it's been a terrific 2 weeks. Thank you so much. It was a joy to not only do all the planning that we put into these 2 weeks, but to actually witness and experience the opportunity to share with the world that peace is no longer a secret.
And game on.
So for our audience, as we close out today's program, I would just like to invite you to join us again next week, where we're gonna spend the whole week on forgiveness. We've got an extraordinary group of panelists who will be with us to help us understand forgiveness as a concept, as a way of being, from a neurological perspective, from folks who have helped people all over the world understand forgiveness, have lived from a place of forgiveness, who have committed their lives to informing, educating, understanding forgiveness. So got another terrific program next week, and as luck would have it, it just builds so nicely off of these 2 weeks on peace. So thank you all for being with us, and we'll see you again on Monday.
Thank you, Tom. You are a gift to these conversations.
Well, it brings me joy.
All right. See you on the flip side.
Thank you all.
Bye, everyone. Peace.
Yeah.